That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to share our top 10 favorite new releases of 2020.
Thus far,
halfway through the year, as is customary at most major outlets and also at Ion Cinema.
So I didn't think this was necessary, but you explained why it is, and it makes sense to me, so explain it.
I believe that this has come to be a custom because by the end of the year, we're so obsessed with all of the Oscar campaigning and all of the releases that are held purposefully for the fall to stay in voters' minds, that there's a whole lot of releases that just get dumped, and especially in a year where we're stuck watching streaming things that people are going to forget about. So yeah, I think it's important to highlight some things that might not be remembered by the end of the year.
Of note, you watch more movies than I do.
Mm-hmm.
You're also including films. Well, you're not including any film festival films. But you just watch more theatrical releases than I do.
These are films, and I believe it is fair that anybody that wants to have access to them would be able to find them on some streaming platform.
So these don't include your Berlin feature?
No, nothing that hasn't experienced some kind of release to the public.
So my list will be more pedantic than yours.
It's not. It's a well-curated list, and actually,
I spent time on mine actually.
Yes, but what's funny is because we did an end of the year list last year, and we had some overlap, maybe half. Neither of us, we don't repeat any titles between our lists.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
So if you're a more fun person, I think you'd like my list, and if you're more serious about film, you'll like Nick's list. Let's start with number 10.
Joseph's number 10.
Also, I probably don't remember all of these very well, so you'll have to help me.
You picked these, okay.
I remember them well enough. Okay, my number 10 is Driveways.
Mm-hmm. It's the sophomore film directed by Andrew Ahn. It premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, I think in 2019.
It's a lovely story of a woman and her young son who moved to an area, sort of a more rural area, after her sister dies to kind of clean up the house and sell it. Mm-hmm. And both of them develop a relationship with the older neighbor played by
Brian Dennehy, who's since passed away.
Which I thought was a really sweet story. Mm-hmm. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is a tie.
Oh, we didn't say you're going to have all that. Well, hurry up.
I have one tie.
Go ahead. Come on.
First up, I have A White Day, the sophomore film directed by Iceland's Hlynur Palmason, premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival and Critics Week, and features a great lead performance by Ingvar Sigurdsson as a cop whose wife has died and afterwards finds out that she's had an affair. I think I really liked it, especially watching it a second time. What?
Okay.
You saw it?
Yeah.
Also at number 10, the tie is Annie Silverstein's directorial debut, Bull, which also premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival in Un Certain Regard, and stars Rob Morgan and Amber Havard. Rob Morgan is a aging bullfighter, and this trashy little white girl that lives next door vandalizes his house, and she's forced to help clean it up and develops a bond with him that they both grow out of. But what I really like the film is, besides Rob Morgan, who I find consistently underrated, I think it was equally as good as Mary J. Blige in Mudbound. He's also great in Black Man in San Francisco. You can see him as Issa Rae's father in the photograph. The great thing about this film is the chemistry he has with Yolonda Ross, who is only in a handful of scenes, but I would have loved to see this film focus on their story a little more than this kind of inert young white girl. But it's definitely worth a watch, distributed by Samuel Goldwyn Films.
Okay. My number 9 film is St. Francis.
Mm-hmm. A directorial debut of Alex Thompson, premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival in 2019.
It's a story about a woman who gets pregnant, decides to terminate the pregnancy, and then immediately starts nannying for a lesbian couple, and then develops a relationship with their child. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a really honest, it was probably the first time I've seen sort of an honest portrayal of an abortion.
I think Obvious Child with Jenny Slate kind of does that too, but yeah, this was I think this was a labor of love for the actress that stars in it, who wrote it, Kelly Sullivan.
Okay.
But yeah.
What's your number 9?
My number 9 is A Girl Missing. It's the 7th feature directed by Japan's Kôji Fukada. It's got a great lead performance by Mariko Tsutsui, and it's about a caregiver who's living in a home, and her son ends up kidnapping the daughter of the people that she works for, and the ensuing fallout. It's definitely a slow burn, great character study, loved every moment of it. It premiered in competition at the 2019 Locarno Film Festival and was distributed streaming via Film Movement.
All right. My number 8 choice was We Summon the Darkness.
Which is directed by Mark Myers. You liked his film My Friend Dahmer as well.
Yes, I did.
This premiered at some place called the Mammoth Film Festival, but also notably played at Fantasia Fest in 2019.
It's about, it's like set in the 80s. It's a horror film. It's about 4 girls who are affiliated with like a extremist Christian group, and they are killing people, but then blaming it on like Satanists to sort of, kind of like how these extremist white people are creating violence at these Black Lives Matter rallies.
Trash.
But it looks great. I think it's a fun movie. What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Swallow, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2019. It's a great lead performance by Haley Bennett, the directorial debut of Carlo Mirabella-Davis. It's about a woman who marries above her social class and becomes pregnant. It's a very constricting marriage, and to kind of gain control over her body, begins swallowing sharp objects.
My number 7 is The Way Back.
It's directed by Gavin O'Connor. It's a studio film, Warner Brothers.
It's a film about a basketball coach, which I did not think I would like, but it's really not about basketball. It's about this coach, played by Ben Affleck, who is like an alcoholic, and this role is kind of beneath him, but he rises to the occasion. There's kind of a twist that we don't expect from something like a uplifting story like this. So it was kind of a non-traditional uplifting story.
Yeah.
All right.
My number 7 is The Assistant, which is kind of a difficult film. It stars Julia Garner as Jane, a young woman that works for a powerful film executive and becomes kind of Weinsteined in that capacity. It's a very dour film. It is the narrative debut of documentarian Kitty Green, played at Sundance and Berlin this year. It was released via Bleecker Street.
My number 6 is Bad Education.
The sophomore film by Corey Finley, whose previous one was Thoroughbreds, premiered at TIFF in 2019.
Okay. It's based on a true story of a superintendent for a school district in New York who was embezzling money. Allison Janney, who I can't think of anything I don't like her in. So that's a plus. But Hugh Jackman playing a gay man was very satisfying.
Yes.
So I would recommend this film.
My number 6 selection is I believe it's the 7th feature directed by Kelly Reichardt, First Cow, which actually premiered at the New York Film Festival in 2019, but competed in this year's Berlin Film Festival. John Magaro and Orion Lee play 2 men in the Oregon Trail era. They're fur trappers that end up stealing the milk from the rich man played by Toby Jones and making sweet delicacies before they're later murdered for their indiscretions. As if you're familiar with any of Reichardt's films, this is very much in keeping with her style, but loved every minute of it. And distributed by A24.
My number 5 film is The Hunt.
That is the 4th feature directed by Craig Zobel, who his 2012 film Compliance is a must-see. It is a Universal Blumhouse film that premiered earlier this year.
Yeah, it's just about a group of like extreme liberals who decide to hunt sort of like uber conservatives whose views clash with theirs. But the beauty of the film is fun, it's very violent, but it's also not as biased as one would think. So I like that it had sort of a more sort of objective viewpoint of why everyone's fucked up in this world.
Great lead performance by Betty Gilpin.
Yes.
Hilary Swank, who I sometimes have problems with, I actually enjoyed in this too.
She's fun in it as well.
Which is funny, that's your number 5 and how this lists out, because my number 5 is Bacurau, which is kind of the Brazilian equivalent of The Hunt. Premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, where it won the jury prize. It's the 3rd feature by Kleber Mendonça Filho. This time he's joined in the co-directing seat by his usual collaborator Juliano Dornelles. And it is basically based at the titular town, which means Nighthawk, after a strange nocturnal bird in the Brazilian hinterlands finds themselves under siege by a group of racist white people that are trying to eliminate them. But the town fights back. Seen through my Western North American eyes, there's a lot I probably don't understand, particularly relating to the culture. But even after watching it twice, there's a lot to unpack here. It is long, but very enjoyable. And Udo Kier and Sonia Braga. Yeah.
My number 4 selection is Horse Girl, which is a Netflix film.
Yeah, well, it premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival.
Okay.
4th film directed by Jeff Baena.
Okay.
Go on.
Oh.
It's your selection.
It's about a young woman suffering from mental health issues. She's sort of on the onset of schizophrenia, dealing with the onset of schizophrenia. And it's just a very unique portrait of that.
Yeah. It is effective. My number 4 is the 5th film directed by Josephine Decker, Shirley, which is a interesting, evocative biopic of the author Shirley Jackson, who's probably best known for her short story The Lottery, or The Haunting of Hill House, which has been made into a film several times. Best by Robert Wise. This details kind of her at a stage where Shirley Jackson was in a mental unraveling. A young intern played by Logan Lerman comes to live in her house to help her professor husband played by Michael Stuhlbarg, and Lerman's wife played by Odessa Young kind of has a love-hate relationship with Shirley Jackson played by Elizabeth Moss. Great performance as she's writing a novel which I believe ended up being Hangs a Man, which I haven't read. Played at Sundance in Berlin this year and was distributed by Neon.
Okay. My number 3 selection is Uncorked, which is also a Netflix film.
Directorial debut of Prentice Penny. It would have premiered at the 2020 South by Southwest Film Festival.
I've referenced this film several times as what I want like new black cinema to be like. It's just a really smart, clever story about a young man who is expected to carry on his family's restaurant business, but instead wants to become a master sommelier. Yeah. Number 3.
Number 3, we just saw last week actually, is the directorial debut of Jeremy Hirsch, The Surrogate, about a affluent young black woman who decides to be the surrogate for her 2 gay best friends in New York, and things don't go as planned when the fetus is determined to have the chromosome for Down syndrome, and the moral dilemma they find themselves in. Fucking fantastic performance from Jasmine Batchelor, who I think, if anything, these types of lists, I hope keep her name around for the end of the year, because it's a performance that's very memorable.
My number 2 selection is The Invisible Man.
Another Elizabeth Moss film.
What was the other one?
Mine was Shirley on my list.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Lee Winnell's 3rd feature. He's better known as the writer of Saw and the Insidious films.
It's a remake, obviously. Elizabeth Moss is so good, I think. It's just a fun... The pacing's great. There's a lot of action, a lot of scares. Definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, and also a Universal Blumhouse film. So
they can do good things.
They can do good things. They often do, on a budget as well. My number 2 selection is Never Rarely, Sometimes Always. It's the 3rd feature directed by Eliza Hittman. It's basically about 2 young girls in Pennsylvania who travel to New York City to get an abortion. For one of them to get an abortion. Newcomer Sidney Flanagan and Talia Ryder, excellent. This is a moving piece of neo-realist cinema that I think is very important for our current climate in the U.S. It played in competition at Sundance and Berlin, picked up prizes in both festivals, the 2nd place prize in Berlin. Eliza Hittman, who previously did Beach Rats, which I also was a big fan of. Yeah.
My number 1 choice so far in the year is Hansel and Gretel. Gretel and Hansel.
Gretel and Hansel,
Sorry.
yes.
This movie was so much fun to me.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. The performance by the witch, what's her name?
Alice Krige. Yes.
So good.
Of Ghost Story and Star Trek and Sleepwalkers. South African actress, love her. Yeah.
The film looks great. It doesn't have sort of the happy ending that we would expect.
And it's from Orion Pictures, the reestablished studio. This was a surprise considering the time of year it came out in. It's also directed by Oz Perkins, his 3rd feature, who's the son of Anthony Perkins.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your number one?
My number one is Dao Natasha, which is... So it's technically this, I guess you could say, the second feature by Ilya Karjanovsky, whose first film was 2004's Four, and it's got a co-directing credit from Yekaterina Ortel. So the Dao films was supposed to be a biopic about the Soviet scientist Lev Landau.
Oh, right.
And Karjanovsky started filming. He built this huge city, kind of like Synecdoche, New York, the Philip Seymour Hoffman film. It's filmed from 2005 to 2011. Everybody on the set was like living the life of a 1950s Soviet person. And then there was they burned the set in 2011, and then hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage have been pieced together since then. And we've been waiting and waiting. There have been multimedia art installations, but as was promised, there are a lot of separate tangential stories that have been culled for their own films. And the first one was Dao Natasha, which played in competition at Berlin, and it won Best Cinematography for Jürgen Jürges, who's known for lensing Haneke's Code Unknown. Natalia Berezhnaya, who's Natasha, and Olga Shakabarnya, I'm saying their very Russian names wrong. Excellent performances as these two women working in this 1950s canteen, and it's just almost over the top in how they're just swilling back liquor through most of it until someone gets called in to be interrogated and shit hits the fan. There was an open letter by the Russian press to the Berlin Film Festival. They were upset about the values and the questionable filmmaking techniques of the film, but all that set aside, I think it's an excellent portrait of fascism and totalitarianism, and you can see it at dao.movie/en. Because of COVID-19, Karjanovsky had planned on unveiling these installments all over at film festivals, but he said this was a project made in isolation for people in isolation, so you can go watch this and other installments there.
Okay. Well, important to note, I was trying to rush us because you have already reviewed all of these films, so they can be found on either our channel or on Ion Cinema.
Yes.
So if you want to hear more about them, you can find them elsewhere. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, bye.
Bye.